The rain pounded New York streets, a relentless drumbeat drowning out the city's pulse. In an alley off Fifth Avenue, Riley Carter crouched under a tattered tarp, her breath visible in the frigid air. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the world felt like it was closing in until a stranger's shadow fell over her. Elliot Monroe, a tech mogul worth millions, stopped mid-stride, his polished shoes splashing in a puddle. He'd seen countless faces like her shallowed eyes, chapped lips, a life ground down by circumstance. But something about Riley's gaze, fierce despite her fragility, hooked him. "You need a place to stay?" he asked, voice low, almost drowned by the storm. She stared, wary, but nodded. That moment changed everything. Elliot's penthouse was a cathedral of glass and steel, perched above Manhattan's glittering chaos. Riley stepped inside, her worn sneakers leaving faint mud prints on the marble floor. She clutched her backpack like a lifeline, eyes darting from the crystal chandelier to the sprawling city view. "This is temporary," Elliot said, his tone firm but kind. "Just until you're back on your feet." Riley's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "No one's ever done this for me," she whispered. Elliot's husband, Julian Harper, watched from the doorway, his arms crossed. Julian was a sculptor, his hands as expressive as his art. But now they were clenched, his jaw tight. He'd built this life with Elliot, years of love, arguments, and triumphs in a world that hadn't always accepted them. The sight of Riley, a stranger in their home, felt like an invasion. "Elliot," he said, voice sharp, "we need to talk. Now." In the kitchen, Julian's words came like a blade. "You brought a stranger into our home without asking me. What's next? Elliot, you adopt every lost soul in New York." His green eyes flashed with hurt, not just anger. Elliot leaned against the counter, his broad shoulders tense. She was freezing. "Julian, I couldn't leave her out there." Julian's laugh was bitter. "And what about us? Our life? You don't get to play savior without consequences." Riley overheard every word from the guest room, her heart sinking. She wasn't here to break anyone's home. She'd been on the streets for 2 years, ever since her family disowned her for coming out as trans. She knew what it was to lose everything. Slipping on her coat, she moved toward the door, but Elliot caught her. "Don't go," he said. "This is my choice." Riley's eyes met his, searching. "I don't want to be your regret." That night, Julian slept in the studio, his sculptures looming like silent judges. Elliot lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between the man he loved and the stranger he couldn't abandon. Riley, in the guest room, traced the scars on her wrist, memories of a life that had nearly broken her. 3 lives, tangled in a single choice, and none of them knew where it would lead. The next morning, Elliot found Riley in the kitchen, brewing coffee with a quiet focus. "You didn't have to do that," he said, surprised. She shrugged. "It's the least I can do." Her voice was soft but steady, and for the first time, Elliot noticed the faint freckles across her nose, the way her hands moved with purpose despite their calluses. Julian entered, his expression cold. "How long is this charity project staying?" he asked, not looking at Riley. Elliot's patience snapped. "She's not a project, Julian. She's a person. The air crackled with tension, and Riley set her mug down, stepping between them. I'll go, she said. I've caused enough trouble. But Elliot's hand shot out, stopping her. No. You're staying. Julian's eyes narrowed. Then you're choosing her over me. The words hung like a guillotine. Elliot's heart pounded. He loved Julian had for a decade, but the thought of Riley back in that alley, alone, gutted him. I'm not choosing anyone over anyone, he said, voice raw. I'm trying to do what's right. Julian turned away, his silence louder than any shout. Riley's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. The penthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. By evening, Riley sat on the guest bed, her backpack packed. She'd survived worse than this. She could survive the streets again. But as she reached for the door, Elliot's voice stopped her. I need you to stay, he said, quieter than before. Not just for you. For me. Riley's throat tightened. Why me? She asked. Elliot hesitated, then answered. Because you remind me of who I used to be. Elliot's words lingered in the air, heavy with a truth he hadn't spoken in years. Riley stood frozen, her hand on the doorknob, her heart caught between gratitude and fear. Who you used to be, she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Elliot sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. Before all this, he gestured at the penthouse. I was nobody. A kid from a small town, kicked out for being gay. I slept in doorways, ate from dumpsters. I know what it's like to have nothing. Riley's eyes softened, seeing past the polished exterior to the scars he carried. She set her backpack down, slowly, and sat across from him. Julian, meanwhile, stood in his studio, chiseling at a half-finished sculpture with furious precision. Each strike was a release anger, betrayal, fear. He loved Elliot, but this act of charity felt like a wedge, splitting their life apart. He'd seen the way Elliot looked at Riley, not with desire, but with something deeper, something Julian couldn't name. It scared him. Over the next week, the penthouse became a fragile ecosystem. Riley kept to herself, tidying the guest room, washing dishes, anything to feel less like a burden. Elliot noticed her quiet efforts, her resilience. He started leaving books for her novels, biographies, anything to spark a conversation. One evening, he found her reading The Great Gatsby, her brow furrowed. You like it? He asked. She glanced up, startled. It's sad, she said. All that money, and he's still so empty. Julian, meanwhile, grew colder. He stopped joining them for meals, his absence a silent protest. One night, Elliot found him in the studio, surrounded by sketches of broken figures. Talk to me, Julian, Elliot pleaded. Julian's eyes were red-rimmed. You're building a life with her, he said. Where do I fit? Elliot reached for him, but Julian pulled away. You're not the man I married. The tension broke at a charity gala Elliot hosted. The penthouse glittered with guests New York's elite, sipping champagne, oblivious to the storm brewing. Riley, in a borrowed dress, stood awkwardly by the balcony, her presence drawing curious glances. Julian, in a tailored suit, played the perfect host, but his smiles were brittle. When a guest asked about Riley, Julian's voice dripped with venom. Elliot's latest project, he said, loud enough for her to hear. Riley's face burned. She slipped toward the door, but Elliot caught her arm. Don't let him push you out, he said, his voice fierce. You belong here. Riley shook her head. I don't belong anywhere. But she stayed, her eyes meeting Elliot's with a mix of defiance and gratitude. Across the room, Julian watched, his heart twisting. The next morning, Riley found a note under her door, Julian's handwriting. We need to talk. Alone. Her stomach churned. But she met him in the studio. Julian stood by his latest sculpture, a jagged figure reaching upward. I don't hate you, he said, his voice tight. But you're tearing us apart. Riley swallowed. I never asked for this. I'll leave. Julian's eyes flickered with something softer. That's not what I want. I want my husband back. Their conversation was cut short by Elliot, who burst in, his face pale. There's a problem, he said. A news outlet had caught wind of Riley's presence, spinning a salacious story about the millionaire and the mystery woman in his penthouse. The article hinted at scandal, threatening Elliot's reputation and his company. Julian's face darkened. This is what happens when you play hero, he snapped. Elliot spent the day in crisis mode, fielding calls, calming investors. Riley, feeling like the eye of the storm, retreated to the guest room. She opened her backpack, pulling out a worn photo of her younger self. Before the streets, before the rejection. She'd been Rachel then, smiling, hopeful. Now, she wasn't sure who she was. But Elliot's kindness had given her a glimpse of something she thought she'd lost dignity. That night, Elliot knocked on her door. I'm not letting them turn you into a headline, he said. You're not a scandal. You're a person. Riley's eyes welled up. Why do you care so much? She asked. Elliot hesitated, then said, because saving you feels like saving myself. Julian overheard, standing in the shadows. His heart broke, not from jealousy, but from realization. Elliot wasn't just helping Riley, was reliving his own pain, his own redemption. Julian wanted to fight for their marriage, but he didn't know how to compete with a ghost. The scandal hit like a tidal wave. Tabloids plastered Riley's face across their pages, her worn features juxtaposed with Elliot's polished smile. Headlines screamed, Millionaire's secret guest lover or charity case. Elliot's company stock dipped, and his phone buzzed with furious messages from board members. In the penthouse, the air was thick with unspoken blame. Riley sat on the guest bed, scrolling through the articles on a borrowed tablet. Each word felt like a knife vagrant. Drifter. Opportunist. She'd fought to survive the streets. But this was a different kind of exposure, stripping her bare for the world to judge. She packed her bag again, her hands shaking. I'm done being your problem, she muttered to herself. Elliot found her before she could leave. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice steady but desperate. This isn't your fault. Riley laughed. A hollow sound. It's always my fault. I show up, and things fall apart. Elliot knelt beside her, his eyes fierce. You're not the one breaking things. I am. Julian, meanwhile, was unraveling. He stood on the balcony, staring at the city's endless lights, his mind replaying every moment of their marriage. He'd loved Elliot's compassion once, the way he'd fought for causes, for people. But now, that same compassion felt like a betrayal. He wanted to scream, to demand Elliot choose. But he feared the answer. The next day, Elliot hired a PR firm to control the narrative, framing Riley's stay as an act of charity. It helped, but the damage was done. At a tense dinner, Julian finally broke his silence. "You're not just helping her, Elliot. You're rewriting your past through her." Elliot froze, fork midair. "What's that supposed to mean?" Julian's voice cracked. "You're trying to fix the boy you were. But I'm here now, and you're letting us break." Riley, listening from the hallway, felt her chest tighten. She didn't want to be anyone's redemption. She slipped into the kitchen, grabbing a pen and paper, and wrote a letter. "Elliot, thank you for giving me a chance. But I can't stay. I won't let your life crumble because of me. Riley." She left it on the counter and headed for the door. But Julian stopped her this time. "Don't," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. "He needs you here. And maybe I do too." Riley blinked, stunned. Julian looked away, his hands fidgeting. "I don't know how to share him," he admitted. "But I see what he sees in you. You're not weak. You're a fighter." The moment was fragile, a thread of understanding between them. Riley stayed, but the tension didn't dissolve. Over the next few days, she and Julian circled each other warily, like strangers forced to share a lifeboat. Elliot, caught in the middle, tried to bridge the gap. He suggested they work together on a project renovating a community center in Brooklyn, one of his charities. "It's something we can all believe in," he said, hopeful. The community center was a crumbling brick building, its walls covered in faded murals. Riley threw herself into the work, painting alongside volunteers, her hands steady with a brush. Julian sculpted a new sign for the entrance, his chisels carving hope into wood. Elliot coordinated, his presence a quiet anchor. For the first time, the three of them felt like a team, their differences softened by a shared goal. But the peace was fleeting. A reporter showed up at the center, camera flashing, questions sharp. "Riley, what's your real story? Are you using Elliot?" Riley froze, paint dripping from her brush. Elliot stepped in, his voice cold. "Leave her alone." But the reporter's words lingered, sowing doubt. That night, Riley overheard Elliot and Julian arguing again. "You're risking everything for her," Julian said. "Our life. Our future." Elliot's reply was quiet but firm. "If we can't help one person, what's the point of all this?" Riley sat in the dark, her mind racing. She wasn't just a guest anymore, she was a catalyst, forcing Elliot and Julian to face truths they'd buried. She thought of her own past, the family who'd rejected her, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. She'd survived by building walls, but Elliot's kindness had cracked them. And Julian, his pain mirrored her own, a reminder that love could hurt as much as it healed. By the week's end, the community center's grand opening loomed. Riley stood in the renovated hall, surrounded by laughter and hope. But her heart was heavy. She knew she couldn't stay forever. The question was whether she'd leave before the choice was made for her. The community center's grand opening was a burst of color and sound, kids laughing, music blaring, the smell of fresh paint and barbecue filling the air. Riley stood in the crowd, her borrowed dress replaced by jeans and a volunteer t-shirt, her hands still flecked with paint. She watched Elliot shake hands with donors, his smile practiced but genuine, and Julian unveil his sculpture, a soaring figure that caught the sunlight. For a moment, she felt like she belonged. But the moment shattered when a heckler shouted from the crowd, "Hey, Monroe, where's your mystery girl? Slumming it with us now." Laughter rippled, cruel and sharp. Riley's face burned, and she slipped toward the exit, her heart pounding. Elliot's voice cut through the noise. "She's not a story. She's one of us." The crowd quieted, but Riley kept walking, her sneakers silent on the pavement. Elliot found her an hour later, sitting on a park bench, her backpack at her feet. "You can't keep running," he said, sitting beside her. Riley's eyes were distant. "I'm not running. I'm surviving. There's a difference." Elliot leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're not alone anymore. Why can't you see that?" Riley's voice trembled. "Because people like me don't get happy endings." Back at the penthouse, Julian was waiting, his face unreadable. "You didn't have to defend her like that," he said to Elliot. "You made it worse." Elliot's jaw tightened. "I'm not ashamed of helping her." "Are you?" Julian's silence was answer enough. He turned away, but not before Riley saw the tears in his eyes. She wanted to speak, to apologize, but the words wouldn't come. The next day, Riley started volunteering at the center regularly, teaching art classes to kids. Her hands, once shaky from hunger, now guided theirs with steady patience. The kids adored her, their laughter a balm to her wounds. Elliot joined when he could, his presence drawing smiles. But Julian stayed away, his absence a growing shadow. Riley noticed how Elliot's eyes lingered on the empty studio, how his laughter felt forced. One evening, Riley found Julian at the center, alone, sketching in a corner. She hesitated, then sat beside him. "Your work's beautiful," she said, nodding at the sketch, a figure caught mid-leap, free yet fragile. Julian didn't look up. "It's not finished." Riley traced the lines with her eyes. "Nothing ever is. Right." For the first time, Julian's lips twitched, almost a smile. Their conversation turned to art, then to life. Julian spoke of his childhood, growing up gay in a conservative town, hiding who he was. Riley shared her own story, coming out as trans, losing her family, surviving the streets. "We're not so different," Julian said quietly. Riley nodded. "Except you have Elliot." Julian's pencil paused. "For now." The moment of connection was fleeting. Back at the penthouse, the tension returned. Elliot proposed expanding the community center, a project that would keep Riley involved. Julian snapped. "So she's permanent now?" Elliot's voice was calm but firm. "She's part of this, Julian. So are you." Julian's laugh was bitter. "You're building a family without me." The next week, a lawyer arrived with papers. Elliot's company was facing a lawsuit, investors claiming his reckless charity had devalued their shares. The scandal had grown, fueled by new rumors about Riley's past. She overheard the lawyer's warning, "Cut ties with her." or lose everything. Elliot's face was stone. I'm not abandoning her. Riley, shaken, retreated to the guest room. She pulled out her photo again, staring at the girl she used to be. She'd fought so hard to become herself, but now she was a burden again. She wrote another letter, this one to both Elliot and Julian. I'm grateful for everything, but I'm leaving. You deserve your life back. She left it on the kitchen counter and slipped out at dawn. Elliot found the letter first, his hands trembling as he read it. No, he whispered, crumpling the paper. Julian, standing behind him. Read it too. His face softened, guilt replacing anger. We pushed her away, he said. Elliot turned, eyes blazing. We? You've been pushing her out since day one. Julian flinched but didn't argue. For the first time, he saw the cost of his resentment. They searched the city shelters, alleys, the community center. Riley was gone, her absence a wound. Elliot's heart ached, not just for her, but for the fracture in his marriage. Julian, too, felt the weight of his choices. They stood together in the rain, searching, knowing they might never find her, but hoping because hope was all they had left. The rain hadn't stopped, mirroring the storm in Elliot's chest as he and Julian combed New York streets. They checked every alley, every shelter, every corner Riley might have gone. Her absence was a void, a reminder of how fragile their makeshift family had been. Elliot's phone buzzed with board members demanding answers, but he ignored them. Finding Riley was all that mattered. Julian, soaked to the bone, broke the silence. This is my fault, he said, his voice raw. I pushed her out. Elliot stopped, rain dripping from his hair. We both failed her, he said. But we're fixing this. Julian nodded, his eyes haunted. For the first time in weeks, they were on the same side. They found a lead at a shelter in Brooklyn. A volunteer recognized Riley's description, saying she'd been there but left hours ago, heading toward the community center. Elliot's heart leapt. The center was her safe place, her refuge. They drove through the storm, the city a blur of lights and shadows. At the center, they found Riley in the art room, alone, sketching on a scrap of paper. Her hands trembled, but her lines were steady as self-portrait, half finished, her eyes fierce yet tired. She looked up, startled, as Elliot and Julian burst in. Why are you here? She asked, voice cracking. Elliot stepped forward. Because you're not alone anymore. Riley's walls crumbled. Tears mixed with rain on her face as she stood, clutching her sketch. I don't belong in your world, she said. Julian knelt beside her, his voice soft. You belong where people care about you. And we do. Riley's breath hitched. She'd spent so long running, surviving. That trust felt like a foreign language. Back at the penthouse, they sat together, the silence heavy but not hostile. Elliot broke it. We need to figure this out together. Julian nodded, his hand brushing Elliot's, a small gesture of reconciliation. Riley watched, her heart caught between hope and fear. She wanted to believe in this, but the world had taught her happy endings were for other people. The lawsuit loomed larger now, the board demanding Elliot step down as CEO. He spent hours in meetings, fighting to save his company while protecting Riley. She, meanwhile, threw herself into the community center. Her art classes growing. Her presence a quiet force. The kids called her Miss Riley. Their trust a lifeline. Julian started joining her, sculpting alongside the kids, his hands finding purpose again. One evening, Riley and Julian worked late, finishing a mural for the center's courtyard. Their conversation was tentative but real, stories of loss, of survival, of finding themselves. "I was jealous of you," Julian admitted, pain on his cheek. "Not because of Elliot, but because you're so strong." Riley smiled faintly. Strong's just another word for stubborn. Their laughter was interrupted by a call from Elliot. The board had given him an ultimatum: sever ties with Riley or lose his position. Elliot's voice was steady. "I told them no. I'm not abandoning you." Riley's heart sank. "Elliot, you can't lose everything for me." He laughed, a tired sound. "It's not about losing. It's about choosing what matters." That night, the three of them sat in the penthouse, the city sparkling below. Elliot laid out his plan. He'd step down voluntarily, take the hit, and focus on the community center. "It's not just about you, Riley," he said. "It's about everyone like you. Like me." Julian reached for his hand, his eyes soft. "I'm in," he said. "But we do this together." Riley felt something shift, a sense of belonging she hadn't known in years. But the world outside wasn't done with them. A new article dropped, digging into Riley's past, exposing her dead name, her family's rejection. The comments were vicious, tearing into her identity, her existence. She read them in the dark, her hands shaking, the old wounds reopening. Elliot found her, his face furious. "They don't get to define you," he said, shutting the laptop. But Riley's voice was small. "What if they're right? What if I'm just wrong?" Julian, standing in the doorway, spoke before Elliot could. "You're not wrong. You're Riley. And that's enough." His words, simple but fierce, anchored her. The next day, they faced the world together. Elliot held a press conference, not to deny the rumors, but to own them. "Riley's not a scandal," he said, cameras flashing. "She's a reminder of why we fight for dignity. For everyone." Riley stood beside him, her chin high, Julian's hand on her shoulder. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause. The press conference changed everything. Elliot's words, raw and unapologetic, shifted the narrative. Social media buzzed with support. Hashtags like Riley Strong trending alongside photos of the community center. But the victory was bittersweet. Elliot's resignation was finalized, his company now in the hands of a board that valued profit over principle. He walked away with his wealth intact, but the loss stung. Riley felt the weight of it. She stood in the community center's courtyard, staring at Julian's sculpture, its curves catching the morning light. "This is because of me," she said when Elliot joined her. He shook his head. "No. It's because I chose to do what's right." Riley's eyes met his, searching. "At what cost?" Elliot's smile was tired but real. "Some things are worth more than a title." Julian, meanwhile, was finding his own way back. He'd started sculpting again, his work rawer, more honest. One paisea figure embracing another, Both broken yet whole stood in the center's lobby, a silent testament to their fractured trio. He and Riley worked side by side now, their shared hours at the center building a fragile trust. One afternoon, as they cleaned paintbrushes, Julian said, "I misjudged you." Riley paused, surprised. Most people do. Their bond grew, not as rivals, but as allies. Julian saw Riley's strength, her quiet humor, the way she lit up when a kid mastered a brushstroke. Riley saw Julian's vulnerability, the way his hands trembled when he spoke of losing Elliot's trust. They weren't friends. Not yet. But they were something two people who'd survived their own wars, learning to share the same space. Elliot threw himself into the center, turning it into a beacon for the city's forgotten. He funded scholarships, art programs, job training, anything to give people like Riley a chance. But the work was exhausting, and the strain on his marriage lingered. One night, he and Julian argued again, their voices low but sharp. "You're still choosing her," Julian said, his hands clenched. Elliot's eyes flashed. "I'm choosing usual of us." Julian walked away, leaving Elliot alone with his doubts. Riley noticed the rift, her heart heavy. She'd never meant to come between them, but her presence was a constant reminder of their fracture. She started spending more time at the center, staying late to avoid the penthouse's tension. One evening, a kid named Marcus, barely 12, showed her a drawing of family, stick figures holding hands. "This is you, Miss Riley," he said, pointing. "You got a home now." Riley's throat tightened. Did she? The question haunted her as winter settled over New York. The city sparkled with holiday lights, but the penthouse felt cold. Elliot tried to bridge the gap, planning a quiet Christmas for the three of them. He cooked, his sleeves rolled up, laughter rare but genuine as he and Riley swapped stories of terrible holiday meals. Julian joined them, his smile tentative, but the warmth was fleeting. When Riley excused herself to sleep, she overheard Julian whisper to Elliot, "I don't know how to do this anymore." The next morning, Riley made a decision. She couldn't keep being the wedge. She packed her bag, lighter now with clothes Elliot had bought her, and left a new letter. "You gave me a life I never thought I'd have. But you need each other more than you need me. I'll be okay. Riley." She slipped out, the city swallowing her steps. Elliot found the letter at dawn, his heart sinking. Julian read it over his shoulder, his face pale. "We can't lose her," Julian said, his voice breaking. Elliot nodded, his jaw tight. They searched again, their desperation a mirror of the first time. Shelters, streets, the center, nothing. Days passed, then a week. Riley was a ghost, her absence louder than her presence had ever been. Then, a breakthrough. Marcus, the kid from the center, called Elliot. "Miss Riley's here," he said. They raced to Brooklyn, finding her in the art room, teaching a class like nothing had changed. Her eyes widened when she saw them. "Why?" she asked, voice shaking. Elliot stepped forward. "Because you're family." Julian nodded, his hand finding Elliot's. "We're not whole without you." Riley's tears fell, but she didn't run. For the first time, she let herself believe she could stay. The three of them stood in the art room, surrounded by kids' drawings. the weight of their choices settling into something new hope. Messy but real. The art room felt like a sanctuary, its walls alive with color and chaos. Riley stood between Elliot and Julian, her heart pounding, their words echoing, "Your family." She wanted to believe them. But trust was a fragile thing, built on years of broken promises. "I don't know how to be part of this," she admitted, her voice small. Elliot's hand rested on her shoulder. "Steady. We'll figure it out together." Back at the penthouse, they tried. Dinners were awkward at first. Silences filled with the clink of forks and unspoken fears. But slowly, they found a rhythm. Riley shared stories of her street life, not to garner pity, but to let them know her. Julian spoke of his art, the way it saved him when words failed. Elliot listened, his laughter a bridge between them. For the first time, the penthouse felt like a home, not a battlefield. The community center became their shared purpose. Riley's art classes grew, drawing kids from across the city. Julian's sculptures dotted the halls, each one a story of resilience. Elliot poured his energy into funding, turning the center into a haven for those society overlooked. They worked as a team. Their differences no longer divides, but strengthens Elliot's vision. Julian's creativity. Riley's empathy. But the world outside wasn't kind. A new wave of articles surfaced, this time targeting Riley's identity. Transgender woman at center of Millionaire's fall. One headline read. The comments were worse, venomous and personal. Riley tried to ignore them, but late at night, she'd scroll through the hate, her old insecurities creeping back. She wasn't enough, not for her family, not for the world, maybe not even for Elliot and Julian. Elliot noticed her withdrawal, the way her smiles faded. One evening, he found her on the balcony, staring at the city. "You're not what they say you are," he said, his voice fierce. Riley's eyes glistened. "Then why does it feel like they're right?" Elliot pulled her into a hug, his arms a shield. "Because the world's loud. But we're louder." Julian joined them, his presence quiet but steady. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice low. "You're not tearing us apart. You're making us better." Riley's breath caught. She'd spent so long fighting to be seen. And now, in this moment, she was. They stood together, the city's lights a backdrop to their fragile bond. Spring brought new challenges. The center faced funding cuts, the city council citing controversy around Riley. Elliot fought back, rallying donors, his charisma a weapon. Julian organized an art auction, his sculptures fetching thousands. Riley, meanwhile, led a protest, her voice steady as she spoke to a crowd outside City Hall. "This center isn't just a building," she said. "It's a lifeline." The crowd roared. And for the first time, Riley felt powerful, not broken. Their efforts paid off, the center was saved, its doors open wider than ever. But the victory came at a cost. Elliot's health faltered, the stress of the past months manifesting in sleepless nights and chest pains. Julian noticed first, his worry cutting through their fragile peace. "You're killing yourself for this," he told Elliot, his voice breaking. Elliot smiled weakly. "It's worth it." Riley felt the weight of his sacrifice. She started taking on more at the center, easing Elliot's load. She and Julian grew closer, their shared worry for Elliot a new bond. One night, As they sorted supplies, Julian said, "I used to think you were a threat. Now I see you're us." Riley's smile was tentative. "Family." Julian nodded. "Family." But the peace was tested when Riley's estranged sister, Claire, appeared at the center. She'd seen the news, the headlines, and tracked Riley down. "I want to understand," Claire said, her eyes wary but earnest. Riley froze, memories of rejection flooding back. "You didn't want me before," she said, her voice sharp. Claire's face crumpled. "I was wrong. I'm here now." Elliot and Julian stood by Riley as she faced her sister. The conversation was raw, years of pain spilling out. Claire listened, tears streaming, as Riley spoke of the streets, the loneliness, the fight to be herself. "I needed you," Riley said. Claire reached for her hand. "I'm sorry. Let me try now." Riley hesitated, then nodded, a small step toward healing. As spring bloomed, the three of them stood stronger, their bond forged in fire. But the world was still watching, waiting for them to falter. And Riley knew, deep down, that their story wasn't over. The penthouse glowed with soft light, the city's skyline a quiet witness to their evolving bond. Riley, Elliot, and Julian sat around the dining table, a makeshift family pieced together from broken parts. Claire's visit had left Riley raw but hopeful, her sister's tentative outreach a crack in the wall of her past. Yet the world outside still pressed in, its judgments relentless. Elliot's health scare had shaken them all. At Riley's insistence, he saw a doctor who prescribed rest and less stress, an impossible ask for a man who'd given everything to the community center. Riley and Julian took on more, their partnership seamless now. Riley ran the art programs, her classes a haven for kids like Marcus, who saw her as a hero. Julian's sculptures became the center's heart, each piece a story of survival. Together, they carried Elliot's vision, giving him space to heal. But the media storm didn't relent. A new article surfaced, this time questioning Elliot and Julian's marriage, painting Riley as the wedge. "Millionaire's husband betrayed." The headline screamed. Riley read it in the dark, her heart sinking. She'd fought so hard to belong, but the world saw her as a villain. She slipped out to the balcony, the cold air biting her skin, and wondered if she'd ever escape her past. Elliot found her, his face lined with worry. "You're not leaving again," he said. Not a question, but a plea. Riley's voice trembled. "I'm hurting you. Both of you." Elliot shook his head. "You're saving us. You made us face what we were too scared to see." Julian joined them, his hand finding Elliot's. "He's right," he said. "I was afraid of losing him. But you showed me what love can be." Their words anchored her, but the doubt lingered. The next day, Riley met Claire again, this time at a quiet cafe. Claire brought photos old ones, from before Riley's transition, when they were kids, laughing together. "I missed you," Claire said, her voice thick. Riley's eyes stung. "I miss me too." They talked for hours, rebuilding a bridge neither thought possible. Claire's acceptance was a lifeline, a reminder that Riley could be loved for who she was. Back at the center, the trio faced a new threat. A rival developer wanted the land, claiming the center was a publicity stunt. Elliot, stronger now, rallied the community. At a town hall, Riley took the stage, her voice steady. "This place gave me a home when I had none," she said. "It's not just brick and mortar. It's hope." The crowd erupted, and the developer's plan was voted down. The victory felt like theirs, not just Elliot's. As summer arrived, the center thrived, a beacon for the city. Riley's art classes expanded. Julian's sculptures drew crowds. And Elliot found purpose beyond his lost CEO title. Their bond, once fragile, was now unbreakable. One evening, they stood in the courtyard, watching kids play under Julian's latest sculpturia trio of figures. Intertwined, reaching for the sky. "This is us," Julian said, his voice soft. Riley nodded, tears in her eyes. Family. The final test came unexpectedly. A national news outlet offered Riley a platform to tell her story. She hesitated, fearing more exposure, more hate. But Elliot and Julian stood by her, their presence a quiet strength. She spoke on live TV, her voice raw but clear. "I was homeless, rejected, broken," she said. "But I found people who saw me, who chose me. And that's what love does, it chooses you, no matter who you are." The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in. From kids, from parents, from strangers who saw themselves in Riley's story. The center's funding soared, its impact rippling across the country. Riley, once a shadow, became a voice. Elliot and Julian watched, proud, their love for her and each other deeper than ever. In the end, Elliot's choice wasn't between Riley and Julian, but for a life bigger than himself. They stood together, not as a perfect family, but as a real one, flawed, fierce, and whole. The city sparkled below, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, light could be found. And for Riley, Elliot, and Julian, that light was each other.